Are you going to entertain us with any jokes or anything?
Well, I'm not going to say jokes, Karen, but as you know, my real motto is that life is too funny to be taken seriously. And
Yes.
so I hope some of the stories I'm going to tell you will amuse you.
You look wonderful, and I'm glad to be a part of this.
Do you like the post-COVID do?
It's good, Jane.
I haven't decided if I'm keeping it yet or not.
You have a question in the chat.
Oh, Lord,
If you want to,
the chat now.
down at the bottom. On my screen, it's down at the bottom in the middle.
I'm answering that right now, Jane. Don't worry about the chat. I will do that for you. That way you don't get distracted or anything.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Pam.
Everyone knows I get easily distracted. The plan is that I'll do my little spiel, and then when we get to the end, oh, there's chat. Okay. When we get to the end, I'll stop the slide presentation and go to the chat room. Any questions or comments y'all want to make would be great. Yes, ma'am. Okay. How about now, guys? You ready to go?
We're ready.
All right, let's go. All right. Well, hello, welcome everyone. Appreciate you being here. Visitation 101, sharing my journey and what I learned along the way. And as I've already told you, this is my first Zoom presentation, and it makes me very, very nervous. Technology is not my friend. Now, when I've done lots of public presentations and in person, which I much prefer. But it's interesting when you go in and you start a public presentation, and generally you're on the stage and the person is introducing you and they say, and this is Jane Wyatt, and they read off your degrees because apparently it's essential to establish that you have some part of credibility so that you actually might know what you're talking about. But my favorite of all time presentation, it was a large audience. I bet 500-600 easy. And I got up there, and of course I was in my new clothes and very, very professional looking. And the presenter read off my name and said I had the following degrees. I had a BS, I had an MA, I had an MS. I was also an LPC. And before they got much further, I hear this voice from the first row saying just loud enough for most of the people in front here, well, the only one she really deserved is the BS degree. Yes, Karen, you know who it was. It was the only person who could say that and get away with it. Because it's the person that, in spite of any degrees and any education and any jobs I had, it was the person that I had my most important job, and that was caregiver of my mom. Mm-hmm. This is Lorraine Murphy. She was a longtime resident of Wimberley, Texas. I lost her last year, just a few months short of turning 99. But I want to tell you some about our life together and some of the things I learned from her. I'm not going to start at the very, very beginning because as I'm in my late 60s and she would have been 100 this year, that would take us back maybe a little too far. But in 2000, I moved to the Hill Country to take a wonderful job in New Braunfels. But I also moved up here because I wanted to be closer to Mom. And she was, she was 79 then. And I started out with an apartment in New Braunfels, but it wasn't long before I just moved in with her. And we had our own activities. We had our own lives. She went and did her thing. I went and did mine. But there's lots of evenings we spent on that back porch, feeding the deer, just discussing the day, just enjoying life together, playing games. Now, she would tell everyone, be careful what you wish for, because if you're wishing your kids would move closer to you, be very careful, because mine just moved back in. And at the same time, I would reply and say, yeah, I moved up here to be my mother's caregiver, but she won't stay home long enough for me to take care of. She was able to drive very safely, and she did. She drove all over Texas. She even had a boyfriend in Corpus Christi for a while. It wasn't one of my favorite times, but it was good for her. We went on cruises together. We played games. She was active in her church. And very few days passed that she wasn't on that back porch having coffee with her best friend. This was taken on her 90th birthday. And we had all the family meet down on the Guadalupe River and had a wonderful weekend. Over the next few years, you could tell she was slowing down. She started slowly withdrawing from social and even church activities, but she still enjoyed having company come to the house and visiting with any relatives, any friends. I can't tell you when the dementia became noticeable, so it was so gradual. The truth is she slowed down a little bit more each day, physically and mentally, but don't we all? Physically, her balance became a major issue. She was on a cane for a short time, but then she was mostly on a walker. She had many UTI infections. She had seasonal allergies that developed into bronchitis and got early stage pneumonia. And each time she would have to be put in the hospital, and she would recover, but with a little less strength. And over the years, her world grew smaller as her activities decreased, her memory decreased, and she was more and more content just to stay at home, sit in her recliner, and just watch the world go by. Like so many elders, all my mom wanted to do was to die at home. And like so many other children, I told her I would make that happen. Eventually, she needed 24-hour monitoring because she was capable of getting up during the night and moving around, even though her judgment and her judgment was not good enough for her really to be out of bed on her own. For a long time, I slept with a baby monitor by the bed, and I could hear any time that bed squeaked, and I'd be up and at him, seeing what she was doing, making certain she was safe. There were more and more falls as the years went by. Even if I was standing right beside her, her last major fall, I was right beside her and still couldn't do anything to prevent her putting her head through the sheetrock. And God bless her, she was not hurt. She was not seriously hurt, other than a good knot on her head, which I told her that she came out a lot better than the sheetrock did. But it finally reached a point that I had to recognize I couldn't keep her safe. Things happened too quick. And a very hard day was a day my sister came and got her. We told her we were evacuating for a hurricane, which was going to hit Houston, and I was worried about the hill country getting flooded. And so Mom left with my sister and went into memory care, without the understanding that she would never be coming back home. Intellectually, I knew it was best for her. Emotionally, I grieved for a long time because I failed to keep my promise to her. And that's one of the first things when I'm talking to adult children now. I say, don't promise to keep them at home. You may do your best, but what you really need to be promising is that you're going to do everything you can to keep them safe, to keep them well fed, to keep them comfortable, to keep them getting the medical care they need. But that's your promise, not that you can keep them at home. So from 2017 to 2020, Mom was a full-time resident of a memory care center. I saw her as often as I could, probably not often enough. It was during this time, for a while, I was really angry because for some reason, I thought old friends and other relatives and her church family would come to visit her more often. And they didn't. There were actually very few visitors outside her immediate family. And finally, I was able to acknowledge it was hard for me to go visit. It was hard to come up with things to say and things to do. And so I understood that they couldn't go. When she passed, this became true for me. New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings, because it was a painful ending. But I recognized and came committed to helping other caregivers, especially adult children who are going through this with their parents, and committing to helping those by sharing the knowledge I had gained from my experiences, and even more what I've learned since then. What I found out is, this was a great picture on it, that the place she was at even had happy hours. Now, Mom didn't even like beer, but that day, by golly, she was going to share a beer. And we had a good time just chatting and visiting over the beer. But what you have to recognize is the person that you're going to go visit isn't the person you've known for a long time. We used to watch basketball and football. She thought the San Antonio Spurs were part of her family. But now we couldn't watch basketball or even football because she couldn't follow the game on the screen. It was very, very easy to become bored or distracted or confused. We couldn't play other games, some of the domino games we played, or canasta, because it was just now above her ability. And so when you go to see a memory impaired person, you might go in thinking, well, I'm just going to sit with them and we can reminisce about the past and all the memories we've shared. And if you do so, you're going to be sadly disappointed, because they might not remember what they had for lunch. They might not remember you. It's at this point, too many people say, well, why should I even go visit? They're not going to remember me in 5 minutes. They don't remember anything about me. But I want to share a memory from you here. If some of you have been in nursing homes and memory care, you know that the rooms are pretty much designed in a U, with the bottom of the U where they have a dining room or a lobby. And that's the way Mom's memory care was. I went to visit her one afternoon, and she was very active that day. She was out rolling around, and she saw me in the lobby, and she came rolling forward, said, well, look here, look who's here to see me. What are you doing here? She always said, why aren't you at work? And I would always have to say, well, I'm off today. But as I said, she was very active that day, and she visited with me just seconds before she just kept rolling. And she started around the U again. So I just sat down in the lobby because I knew that she would eventually come out the other side. And coming down the hall, she saw me again. And she said, well, when did you get here? Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you. And she came up and sat for just a few seconds more. And then guess what? She started off again. And this time when she came around the side, she said, I've been looking all over for you. And it's that moment I still remember, because even though she didn't remember me for moments at a time, the big smile on her face every time she saw me did so much for me. And the smile on my face every time I saw her let her know I was glad to see her, I was happy to be there. And it made her feel good. And so that's why you go to see people in the memory care centers, is because even for those few seconds, you make such a difference in their life. And what you get out of it is for those few seconds, you get a lot more in yours. So never let it be said that it's not of value to go visit. As I said, I've committed to trying to share what I learned and sometimes what I wish I had learned. There were so many times I wish I'd known more then. Sorry, I have multiple distractions. So far, the phone decided to ring and the cat decided to claw at the window. Now, haven't done that all day. Okay, so I want to share what I've learned, but also what I wish I'd learned, because since then, I've taken the time to do more research, and I have the memories of when I didn't have the answers I needed. And so I've done more research, I've done more learning, I've talked to more people. But you know, when you're a 24/7 caregiver, you don't have time to read a 300-page book. You don't have time to spend talking to a lot of other people. And so by doing these short presentations or writing short books, which I'll tell you about later, that's a way I'm trying to reach out to more caregivers and share the knowledge. As Calvin did, you know, sometimes it was like, I should have known that, or I should have thought that through. And why didn't I think of this years before? Like music. Now, what I didn't know before is that the area of the brain that keeps your musical memories is one of the very, very last to be involved with the progression of Alzheimer's and dementia. For some reason, the area of the brain will stay more active. And I know now that the nursing homes and the memory care centers know that already, because they try as often as they can to bring in musicians and have musical programs. And it's so great. Everyone joins in. That was my mother's favorite activity, is to go and watch musicians. I just had a friend this week talking about her mother, who is in advanced stage dementia. And she was very active in the choir in the church. I guess she played the piano. And she doesn't remember very much. But when her son comes to visit, who is a professional musician playing the piano, they name that tune. And he will start playing an old hymn on his piano, and immediately she will know the name of that hymn. So that brain, that part of the brain is very important. So I knew Mom enjoyed the guest musicians, but I wish I had thought, about doing some one-on-one with her. Does anyone besides me remember Mitch Miller? Probably you are a little young. Oh, I see some head shaking there, okay. He had the television program, and they sang the songs that everybody knew, but they played the words on the screen, and you followed the bouncing ball. And he led singing on TV. I wish now I had gone out and gotten maybe some of the CDs or DVDs of his programs. And Mother and I could have shared that on her TV, and she would have enjoyed it. And it didn't matter if we were in a room by herself, it didn't matter how bad I sang, she would have enjoyed it. Little children's songs. It's interesting, they remember those. And she could do Eensy Teensy Spider going up the water spout. But I forgot to involve her in many of the others. And I wish I'd thought about it now. With the smartphones today, you can take their own music. You can see, if you knew what they enjoyed, maybe Frank Sinatra, I don't know, Mitch Miller. Mitch Miller? Yeah, Mitch Miller. And you can have them play it on the earphones or play it in their rooms. You don't have to wait for the musicians to come and be there. You can have them a one-on-one concert. And it's even fun to stop by Walmart or Target or someplace and get them a musical instrument so they can play along with them. Or you can even put pennies in an old tin can and let them shake it to the music. Anything musical is so nice for them and something they can really enjoy. And of course, music can certainly lead to another activity, which is any kind of movement. Now, the people on the left are, they're pretty advanced as far as their dance moves. But I've seen people that could barely shuffle around, and you put on a good music and get their wives out there, and all of a sudden they move like there's no problem anymore. But even if they're in a wheelchair, grab their hands, sway to the music, do a do-si-do. Anything you can do to get movement is beneficial to them from a music standpoint and also just from a physical activity. And I will say, I wish I danced more with my mom because she would have loved it. There's lots of other activities. I've seen some very spirited games of balloon volleyball. Now, Mother and I would just play where we were batting a balloon up and down, just trying to keep it in the air, except Mom would get very competitive and spike it at me. And just have the best time when I'd say, okay, you got that point, 1 point for you, 0 for Jane. But it was the movement that was good for her. Now, here's one that I wish I had thought about at the time. They call this cornhole. And you can play it in a wheelchair or with a walker or whatever. It's a very simple game. But it would have been a lot fun, and certainly that would have been a lot easier on me than her spiking the balloon at me. There are countless other games. We played checkers, and she actually did pretty darn good. She made moves that surprised me. And then sometimes we do crossword puzzles. With her level of impediment, we needed to get puzzles with large pieces and ones with very defined corners and very vivid. But both of these were fun to do, and you can do them over and over and over again. Now, one of the things I learned with playing games with her now is who cares who wins? I have a friend in Mexico who plays in a women's golf league. And I had the audacity one time to ask her what her handicap was. And she said, well, I don't know. We don't keep score. And being the competitive person I am, I said, what do you mean you don't keep score? And she said, we get out there every week. We hit the balls. We don't keep score. We don't care. It's for the companionship and for the exercise. Well, that's kind of how all of us probably at our age might need to think about these games. It's for the companionship. It's for being together, and who cares who wins? Although the food in the dining room where she was at was really good, you'd think she had the biggest treat on earth if I bought her a Whataburger, fries, and a Coca-Cola. And we'd eat in a room, and that made it even extra special for her because it was still one-on-one, and it was her getting some really personal attention. So that's a simple thing you can do when you go visit, check out and see what sort of food they can eat, see what you can take them. And they'll think it's from a 5-star chef. I had to learn how to visit. And there's little things that should be real obvious. When you go in, you want to go in and greet them with that smile on your face and with your attention. Because if you go in grumpy and still have your road rage or whatever is going on in your head, and they're going to pick up real fast that you've got your mind on other things and you don't really care if you're there to see them. But if you go in with a smile, it lights up their world immediately. I had to learn to make certain I was down on the level of the person I'm talking to, whether it was mom in a wheelchair or any of the other companions that she had there. No one likes to be talked down to. No one likes to have to lift up their neck. So get down on their level. While I was blessed that she knew me, there were other people that might be familiar to her, but she couldn't quite come up with that name. Take this young man. This is her favorite grandson. But if I were going in with him, as I did this day, I'd be sure and say, hey, Mom, look, Jackson's here, your favorite grandson, and give her that clue of who it is. Now, most of the time, even after that, she'd call him that boy. But isn't this a lovely picture of her and that boy? Because he is down on her level. He is with her. He is present with her. They are talking about the card. And all of her attention is on him, and all of it is on her. And what a blessing. It was a great visit that day. And some of the other grandkids went. But that brings up the next way I'm going to suggest not to visit. Many families, especially around the holidays or visits, decide, oh, let's get the whole family and go. Let's get all the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and the nieces and the nephews and all the siblings, and let's all go see grandmother, granddaddy at the same time. So you've got all these people crowded into a dining room or a visiting room. You've got the curtain climbers over here running around. You've got somebody trying to corral all the little children. You've got the adults sitting there having little multiple conversations. And then you still might have the one or two that are actually focused on the person you went to visit. If you look at this from the side of the person with dementia or Alzheimer's, that is so overwhelming. That is all these people that might be familiar, might not be, moving around. And then you've got other residents and other staff members coming through. And it just is too much. It tires him, it confuses him. And so what I want to suggest is that limiting your visits to just having one or two people, at most three, and finding a time where they can, maybe be a little focused and be away, and keeping your visits short, as they may tire easily, is a better way to visit, and one that will go over much better with them, not leave them so overwhelmed, and hopefully you'll go visit more often. Boy, I learned a lot about communication, and I thought I was very knowledgeable. But I learned even more how important communication styles are. The person you are visiting is an adult, and condescending baby talk is not appropriate. But neither are long sentences with big words out of Webster's dictionary. You need to keep your sentences short, and you need to make them easy to understand. Use a simple language. And when you want their attention to be directed someplace, use adjectives and gesture. Instead of saying, hey, Mom, see that lady with the purse over there? And she's going to be looking all over the room. What lady? What purse? Where am I supposed to be? But if I gesture and say, hey, Mom, look at that lady over there with that red purse. What do you think of that purse? Then she can follow my hand. She can follow what I'm saying and see exactly or much more quickly what we're talking about. There's also a real difference between asking questions and giving them a quiz. It sounds so simple, it sounds so easy. What'd you have for lunch? Oh my goodness. They don't even know who they are. They don't know who you are. They can't remember what they had for lunch. But in their mind, that may become a quiz and be very, putting them on the defensive and putting them where they don't feel comfortable and making them feel inadequate, leading to a state of confusion and sometimes of sadness. So instead of saying, what'd you have for lunch? Try, hey, I heard they serve good chocolate cake here. Do you like chocolate cake? Because when you ask it that way, there's no wrong answer. The people you are visiting are limited to how much they change or influence the visit, but you are the key. First of all, I would ask you to check out your own agenda before you ever walk in. Are you there to see them because you feel it's an obligation? Are you there because you want to honor someone that you've known? It's not something anyone wants to do for the most part. I know how depressing it is to walk into a nursing care or memory care. But when you do it, when you're honoring and respecting that person, you want to come out of it with the best outcome. You want to come out of it with giving them a few seconds, a few minutes of sunshine, but you also want to come out with a positive memory within your heart. If you expect the person to be who they used to be, it's just not going to be that way anymore. They're no longer strong and smart and able to conquer everything. That time has passed. And so you are now the adult of the room. Let go of the expectation of who they were so you can see who they are today. That's a different perspective. I would challenge you to separate that thought from the visit you are making. Encourage you to have a different way of thinking where you are there for the person now and for the person you are now. I don't have many regrets about visits with Mom, but I will share this one with you. Among other things, I am a retired massage therapist, which kind of follows the old party line about if your husband is a plumber, you know, you always have leaking faucets all over the place because he will never do the work at home. Why did I not think to take some nice smelling lotion and give my mom more hand and back massages? I just didn't think about it. Applying that lotion and the gentle touch conveys a love and caring that words are just not significant. You don't have to be a professional. All you have to do is touch lightly and gently, and they will love that sense of touch. There are other forms of touch. Combing their hair, telling them they're beautiful and combing their hair, putting on lipstick maybe sometimes. A lot of the homes have someone come in to do manicures and pedicures. There's no reason we can't do that ourselves. We don't need to be clipping nails. That might be a little risky sometimes because their nails get very, very tough. But you can do a pedicure, manicure. You can even employ touch by using hand puppets because they have a tactile sense, and you can create a little bit of silliness. You can play with Play-Doh and get them to make shapes. And if they have a problem with that, take cookie cutters and have them roll up the Play-Doh and then cut figures out. Anything that involves the sense of touch gives them an added dimension of interaction. We all like to feel like a winner. We all like to be acknowledged for accomplishment. We want to feel that we are useful and helpful to others. And we all want to receive praise and acknowledgement. Now, bingo is a very common game in all of the nursing centers. It's fairly easy. Most of them can follow it, or you can have somebody sitting beside and help follow it. It's a great game. But there's other games you can play. What I did like about Mom's Bingo is they made certain everybody won, and there was always a prize for the winner for each game. Now, I do have to share that Mom would often lean over and say, that woman over there is cheating. She didn't have a bingo. But I just say, well, Mom, isn't it nice she got a prize anyway? Along with the sense of playing games and being a winner, there's a sense of accomplishment. And everyone wants to feel valued. I was in a care residence recently, and they have whole stacks of trays for what they call their purposeful living activity. And what they would have is all the silverware that needed to be stored into all the knives and the forks and the spoons. And so they would go to the resident and say, we really need your help doing this. Can you help us? Can you sit here and sort this? I've seen other activities where they have people sorting buttons. And again, the accomplishment and the praise they get. Almost all of the memory care centers have gardens where they can go out and plant seeds or maybe pull a few weeds. Folding clothes, all of the chores that are a pain to us are golden moments for them because they want to feel so useful. Now, here's an important suggestion though. If you assign them a task and you want it done perfectly, you want it done rapidly, and you want it finished, you're going to be disappointed. And you're giving them the wrong agenda. Give them a task, but don't be surprised if they don't finish it because they become distracted and want to do something else. Don't be surprised if they don't do it perfectly because at that age and with that mindset, don't be surprised at them not being able to complete it, not do it perfectly, and they go off somewhere else, not finish the task. The objective was to make them feel like they are valued. Okay, anybody remember Jimmy Stewart and Harvey? Pam, is that a head shake? Yes. Do you remember that? You bet. Okay. Old black and white movie for those of you who might not remember. So there are some younger people in here. Jimmy Stewart had an imaginary friend named Harvey, who was like, 6, 7 foot tall rabbit, because he was always having to look up to Harvey. Harvey went with him everywhere he went. And the main part of the movie is that his friends' relatives were trying to put him into a assisted living, but back there, I think they were actually called mental institution because of his imaginary rabbit. And at the very end of the movie, you see an outline, a shadow of the rabbit. So you don't know, was it real? Was it not? Okay. This is what I thought of a lot of times when Mother would see things or imagine things or hear things that maybe weren't there for me. There were a number of times she saw and was having conversations with people in the ceiling. And who am I to say? Maybe they were. But join them in their reality wherever they are. Let me tell you another story. Okay, so one day she's sitting in her wheelchair and she's staring at the fireplace. And she says, Jane, do something about all those bugs coming out of the fireplace. No bugs. But I joined her in her reality. And I went and got a little bit of bug spray and squirted on it. And I said, okay, that should get them. It wasn't long before, Jane, they're coming out again. Well, I didn't want to smell that bug spray. So this time I went and got a little air freshener and fumigated the fireplace with air freshener, which made the house smell pretty good. it was kind of overwhelming too. And I thought that I had it. No, in a little bit, I had left the room, came back in. She'd gone over and gotten the fireplace poker and was going after those bugs. Now, this was scary on a couple of fronts. One, I didn't know what damage she'd do to the fireplace. And two, if she turned around and thought I was a bug, I was scared what she was going to do with that poker. So I reached a compromise. I got the poker away from her, and I went and got a long fly swatter, got her chair over close to the fireplace, and she was happy the rest of the afternoon killing those bugs. That was her reality. I needed to join her in it. You don't tell people with memory impairment they're wrong, because what good does it do? If they say, oh, mom's coming over to see me, they're in their 90s, and mom's coming over to see me later this afternoon, it is not beneficial to anyone to say, your mother died 50 years ago, she's not coming over. Instead, it's so much easier to say, well, that is great. Tell me more about your mother. And let her talk about her. Join their reality of wherever they are. There was one time I want to tell you about, and it goes with this saying, people do not stop experiencing things just because they stop remembering them. And this is important because whatever they're feeling, they may not remember, but they know the feeling. I walked in one time to the Memory Care Center, and one of the ladies there was just sitting and crying and so sad. And I said, Ginger, what's wrong? She said, they just told me my mother was dying. She had sadness. She had had sadness for hours. There was no getting her off of the sadness, no matter how many questions you ask. But it was her sadness, and she had a right to her feelings. This happened to me with Mom one night, and it's probably one of the most heart-wrenching evenings I ever shared. Mom was sitting in the recliner, and it got to be about 6 o'clock, and she said, Jane, I'm worried. Preston's not home yet. Well, Preston was her beloved husband that had died 14 years before. And so I said, well, Mom, he must just be working late. And kind of like the bugs, I thought it was over. But in a little while, she said, well, Jane, I'm really worried. Preston wouldn't be working this late. Have you heard from him? And I said, well, Mom, he might have gone by where his mother lived to visit with her. I bet he'll be home later. Well, in a little while, it was time for her to go to bed, and I got her, dressed and into bed. And I thought, okay, that's the end of that story. Probably an hour later, I was walking past her bedroom door. Jane? I said, yeah, Mom, what is it? She said, Jane, I am so worried. I'm so worried. Have you heard from Preston? He should have been home by now. I made a decision, and to this day, I don't know if it was the right one, and I don't know what else I should have done. But I walked in and I sat beside her, and I said, Mom, I have to tell you, Preston's gone. Preston died. And she immediately grabbed me and started crying. And she said, oh, what happened? Was it an accident? And I said, no, Mom, he had a heart attack. And she said, baby, I know you were trying to protect me, but always tell me the truth. And she cried herself to sleep that night. And of course, by the time she got up the next morning, there was no memory of the anxiety she had been through. But I still have the memory, and I still don't know if there was a better way to handle that. And I'm still going to keep looking until I find out if there was. One of the most important things, and I've kind of made reference to this, is when you go to visit, to be present. Don't be thinking about what you're going to do after you leave. Don't be thinking of what you did before you came. Don't be thinking of what else is on your list to do, the vacation you're going to leave on next week and how much you have to do. Be present with them if you're going to go visit. It'll make all the difference in the world to both you and them. And I wanted to show you my favorite picture of me and my mom. And this was a totally unposed. My sister snapped it. We were at a restaurant and snapped it, and I didn't see it until weeks later. But I love this picture because to me it shows that both of us were present, and it shows the love that we had between us. I share my knowledge based on the mistakes I made, the experiences I gathered, the feelings I regret. I know that I did my best for my mom, but since her passing, I've discovered more that I wished I had known at the time. And I have determined that the best way of honoring her is to share what I know with the people who can use it now. That's why I started my own little organization last November called CAREShare, devoted to caregiver advocacy, resource, education, and support. I have made it my legacy project, even though I didn't think I was old enough to have a legacy project. But I realized that I really wanted to spend the rest of the time that I could sharing knowledge. So I'm doing so through Facebook, through writing articles, and through even writing books. The first book I wrote is this one, Visiting with Love. It's on Amazon, or if you're in the Wimberley area, it's at the Moon Goddess bookstore. And as soon as I can finish it, I have another one called Communicating with Love, which are some of the tips I shared tonight. Creating joyful conversations. I entitled all of my books as being the 10-minute caregiver guide. As I said, I recognize that caregivers don't have time to read very much. And so I'm trying to issue very concise, fast knowledge that you can pick up and immediately absorb. And with that bit of history, I'm going to bring this to a close and give you my favorite Maya Angelou quote. I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. All of us that are caregivers are doing the very best we can and should live each day with no regret, knowing that we're doing our best. And so I'm going to stop my program now and go to the chat room and see if there are some questions, some comments, some situations that you might have as soon as I can find the chat room. Hey there, Vermont. How you doing?
Oh, good, good. Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or any experiences they want to share? Tell me where you are in the caregiving process. Okay, come on. I can pay somebody. All right. If you have no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
It's Nami. Actually, this is Nami. Can you hear me?
There you are. I can't find you.
Okay. A few years ago, my husband and I went to live with his grandmother and took care of her for a few months until we were not possible to, I mean, it was so hard.
Yes.
And I remember that what you say, that she was always looking for people that were no longer with us, and she was always asking about them. And another thing is that one day she thought that she was the cleaning lady, that came over to the house and clean.
Send
But I
it to me. That would have been fine.
and so she would ask me, what else do you want me to do? Or is it okay if I go home now? And stuff like that. One time she was able to sneak out, and we couldn't find her. And she was just walking around and looking at just every building and trying to figure out where she was and all that, until my husband found her and brought her home. And another thing that I noticed is that they get very strong, at least physically. At least she did. Like she was also getting a little, I don't want to say violent, but she would
Aggressive.
grab, yes, aggressive. She would grab me by the arms, like she was frustrated and tried to get my attention or something. And she would actually leave the marks on my arm.
Mhm.
And I was just amazed on how strong she was. And she would just go to the garden and get the push lawnmower, and she would just work and work and work right there. I was, wow, I cannot even do that myself.
Right. Right.
So it was very hard, and there we got to a point where we said, I'm sorry, but we cannot take care of her any longer. But this was
It is hard. And no one hasn't been in that place can really recognize how hard it is.
yes.
And so I applaud you for when you've had a chance to see your grandmother. Maybe this will give you a little insight into maybe how to talk to her more. I was very blessed that my mother was never aggressive, but I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And they can just flip into anger. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes the first thing you always try and do is try and distract them. Get the music going, get them doing something. Maybe not even putting the focus on them, but putting the focus on someone else so that they're distracted. Sometimes that helps, and sometimes it's like the feelings. If they're upset, if they're angry, that may be how they stay. And I can't answer that, except that that's certainly a time when you've got to step back and let the professional staff at the Memory Care Center get into action,
Mm-hmm.
because they are incredibly strong, Naomi.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Yeah. And back then I didn't know anything about the Alzheimer's and all of this. And so thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank
I
you.
wish I knew all of this before. Thank you
Well,
so much.
keep tuned in, and any of you, I've already been so blessed in the last 6 months since I've, I guess, announced that this is what I want to do. I've had a number of friends that have called me from all over the place and said, well, I never thought to ask you this before, but I've got this situation with my mother, with my father, and what do you think? And it's been so honoring that they call and ask me. And I wish I knew all the answers, but all I can do is share my experiences and try and help them find the answers. So, and I mean, if you go back, if you have any questions, if any of you here have any questions, just give me a call. I'd love to do whatever I can to assist.
Thank you so much. We have some comments on the chat. Thank you for great information, useful information. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to be prepared for it. And when I need to be a caregiver, great presentation. I'm so glad to see this. I wish I had access to your knowledge, compassion, and insight when I was taking care of my parents. Great presentation. Really good presentation, Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, we're probably going to do another one, and didn't you say maybe in August?
Yes, we'll talk about it for whenever we are able to do an in-person program here at the library.
I'm going to change up things on you, Naomi, because I'm really excited about the next one. I've decided I want to do a real fun one.
Oh, good.
It's called Old Age Ain't for Sissies.
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good.
It will be. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And thank all of you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.